My ex abandoned our newborn for her affair partner. 10 years later, she's back, demanding custody. But the son she left behind wants nothing to do with her. I, 39M, never thought I'd be writing this post. Life has a funny way of turning out completely different from what you expect. I guess I should start from the beginning to help you understand how I got here. I met my ex-wife Lisa, 37F, during my sophomore year at university. I was pursuing a business degree, and she was in the fine arts program. We met through mutual friends at a campus coffee shop where she worked part-time. She was different from anyone I'd ever met, creative, free-spirited, and always full of energy. I was more practical and grounded, but somehow we balanced each other perfectly. We dated for 4 years before getting married at 24. Our wedding was small but perfect, just close family and friends. Lisa was still pursuing her art, working at a local gallery while I'd started my career in finance. We bought a small house in the suburbs with a yard, planning ahead for the family we wanted to have someday. The first 5 years of marriage were great. We traveled, built our careers, and enjoyed being young and in love. Around 29, we decided it was time to start trying for a baby. We were financially stable, had good jobs, and felt ready for the next chapter. After 6 months of trying, Lisa got pregnant. I still remember the day she told me she had arranged a small scavenger hunt around our house, ending with a positive pregnancy test. I was over the moon. I threw myself into preparing for fatherhood. I read every parenting book I could find, went to all the doctor's appointments, painted the nursery, though Lisa had to fix my amateur attempt, and even learned to cook proper meals since Lisa had terrible morning sickness. The pregnancy went smoothly, and Lisa seemed happy, but looking back, I guess she had started becoming a bit distant. Jake was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. The moment I held him, I felt this overwhelming love I'd never experienced before. The first 2 months with Jake were exhausting but amazing. I took 6 weeks of paternity leave to help Lisa adjust. She seemed to struggle with breastfeeding and was often tired and emotional, but I thought that was normal for new mothers. I tried to help as much as I could, doing night feeds and diaper changes. Then came the day that changed everything. I had an early meeting, so I left before Lisa and Jake were awake. The meeting finished sooner than expected, so I decided to surprise them by coming home early. I picked up lunch from Lisa's favorite deli, thinking it would cheer her up since she'd been seeming down lately. When I got home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Jake's stroller and diaper bag were by the door, but Lisa's car was gone. I found Jake sleeping peacefully in his crib, but when I went downstairs, I saw an envelope on our dining table with my name on it. The letter inside shattered my world. Lisa confessed she'd been having an affair with her art teacher, Mark, 45M, for the past 2 years. They had met when she took advanced classes at the local art center. Then came the biggest blow: Jake wasn't my biological son. He was Mark's. She wrote that she was leaving to be with Mark because they were in love and wanted to travel the world together. She said she couldn't handle the guilt of raising Jake with me knowing he wasn't mine. Mark apparently didn't want to raise a baby yet as it would interfere with their plans, so they decided to leave Jake with me. I sat there reading and rereading the letter, unable to process what was happening. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I must have sat there for hours until Jake's cry snapped me back to reality. I went upstairs, picked him up, and just held him while we both cried, him because he was hungry, me because my life had just fallen apart. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work and just focused on keeping Jake alive and fed. My sister Emily, 35F, came over as soon as I called her. She was furious at Lisa but amazing with Jake. She helped me figure out the formula measurements and showed me how to properly burp him. Lisa had signed the divorce papers and termination of parental rights before leaving. They were in the same envelope as her letter. She'd planned this whole thing. I won't lie, I was angry. Furious actually. Not just at the affair, but at the complete disregard for an innocent baby's life. Who abandons their 2-month-old child? But every time I looked at Jake, I couldn't bring myself to abandon him too. He was innocent in all this. He didn't ask to be born into this mess. My parents were incredibly supportive when I told them everything. My mom, 65F, said something I'll never forget: that baby needs love, not DNA tests. They helped me find a good lawyer who handled both the divorce and Jake's adoption. Lisa had made it legally easy. At least, she'd signed away all her rights. The first year was hard. Really hard. I had to learn everything about taking care of a baby while dealing with my own grief and anger. I switched to a job with more flexible hours. Emily or my mom would watch Jake when I had important meetings. I learned to balance bottles while typing reports, changed diapers in record time, and became an expert at one-handed tasks while holding a baby. Jake is 10 now, and he's the best kid I could have asked for. He's known since he was old enough to understand that I'm not his biological father, but it's never mattered to him. He calls me dad, tells me he loves me every night before bed, and is the center of my world. I never heard from Lisa or Mark again after they left, and honestly, I preferred it that way. But last week, Lisa showed up at our door. She looked different, older, more worn down. She said she and Mark had gotten married but hadn't been able to have kids despite trying for years. After 2 miscarriages, doctors told her she couldn't conceive anymore. Apparently, Mark had always wanted children, ironic given he abandoned his first one, and was now pressuring her to get Jake back. I actually laughed when she said this. I told her Jake was my son, I was the one who taught him to ride a bike, who helped him with math homework, who held him through stomach bugs and nightmares. I was there for every school play, every soccer game, every important moment while she was off living her dream life with her affair partner. She started crying, saying she was young and stupid then but regretted leaving Jake every day. She begged to meet him just once. I refused and told her to leave. She threatened to go to court, saying she was his real mother. I told her to try. I had full legal custody and Jake was old enough to decide who he wanted to live with. She left, but I know this isn't over. I've already contacted my lawyer to prepare for whatever she might try next. I haven't told Jake about her visit yet. He's happy, doing well in school, and has no interest in meeting his biological parents. I won't let anyone disrupt the life we've built together. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since Lisa showed up at our door, and everything has snowballed into a complete nightmare. I wish I could say she was just making empty threats about going to court, but yesterday morning, I got served with custody papers at work. She's seeking partial custody of Jake, claiming she was suffering from postpartum depression when she signed away her rights. According to my lawyer, her case is weak, but we still need to prepare for a legal battle. The custody papers weren't even the worst part of these past 2 weeks. Lisa has apparently been stalking us, trying to force her way into Jake's life. Last Tuesday, she somehow found out which school Jake attends. I suspect she got the information from one of our old mutual friends. She showed up during lunch break, telling the front office she was Jake's mother and wanted to surprise him. Thank God I had already informed the school about the situation the day after she first appeared at our house. I didn't want to take any chances. The principal immediately called me when Lisa showed up. She was asked to leave, but she made a scene in the front office, screaming about her maternal rights. Unfortunately, Jake saw her from his classroom window. He had never seen her before, but he's smart enough to figure out who she was based on her behavior. Jake was so shaken by the incident that he didn't want to go to school for the next 3 days. He kept saying he was sick, but I knew he was scared she would show up again. I had to work from home those days because he wouldn't let me out of his sight. It broke my heart seeing my usually confident, outgoing son so anxious and afraid. My sister Emily has been amazing through all this, but even she got dragged into the mess. Lisa found her on Facebook and bombarded her with messages begging for help to meet Jake. She sent Emily old baby photos of Jake, claiming they proved she had always loved him. Emily was furious because those weren't even photos Lisa had taken, they were pictures I'd taken and shared with family during Jake's first year. Lisa had probably saved them from someone's social media before I blocked all mutual contacts. Emily sent me screenshots of their conversation before blocking Lisa. The messages were disturbing. Lisa kept switching between playing victim, I was young and scared, and making threats, Mark has connections in the legal system. She even tried to guilt Emily by saying that as a woman, she should understand a mother's pain. Emily replied telling her that real mothers don't abandon their 2-month-old babies to gallivant around the world with their affair partners. The situation got even more complicated when Mark showed up at my office yesterday. He walked in during my lunch break, acting like he owned the place. He's aged well, I'll give him that, expensive suit, designer watch, the whole package. But his attitude made my blood boil. He tried to intimidate me, saying I had no right to keep his biological son away from them. I reminded him that he was the one who didn't want Jake initially, that he had chosen traveling and building a life over his newborn son. He had the audacity to say he had changed and was ready to be a father now. I asked him if he thought fatherhood was something you could just opt into when it was convenient. He didn't like that. The conversation got heated when he started threatening me with legal action. He bragged about how much money they had, how they could afford the best lawyers in the state, and how they would make my life hell until I gave in. I stayed calm, which seemed to irritate him even more. I simply told him that all his money couldn't buy the 10 years of memories and love I shared with Jake. When he wouldn't leave, I had security escort him out. That night, I was talking to Emily on the phone about the court case when Jake overheard us. I found him sitting on the stairs, crying silently. He ran into my arms saying he didn't want to leave me, that he didn't want to live with strangers. We spent hours talking that night. Jake told me he felt angry that his biological parents had abandoned him as a baby and now wanted him just because they couldn't have other kids. He said it made him feel like a backup plan, a replacement child. What really got to me was when he asked, with tears in his eyes, if I would still love him even though he wasn't my blood. I held him tight and told him my mom had told me 10 years ago that love, not DNA, makes a family. I assured him that nothing could make me stop loving him or being his dad. I've started documenting everything: Lisa's appearance at school, Mark's visit to my office, all the messages she sent Emily. My lawyer says it will help our case, especially since their behavior could be seen as harassment. We have a meeting tomorrow to discuss our strategy for the custody hearing. The hardest part of all this is seeing how it's affecting Jake. He's having trouble sleeping, his grades are slipping, and he's become clingy again, like he was during the pandemic. I've emailed his teachers to let them know about the situation, and they're being understanding. His best friend's mom has offered to pick him up from school with her son for the next few weeks, just to be safe. I never wanted Jake to have to deal with this kind of drama, but I guess life doesn't care about our plans. All I can do now is protect him and make sure he knows he's loved and wanted. Not because of biology or legal obligations, but because he's my son in every way that matters. Update 2. The situation has gotten more complicated over the past month. Lisa and Mark's lawyer reached out to my attorney with what they called a reasonable compromise: they would drop the custody case if we agreed to supervise visitation twice a month. They even suggested having a child psychologist present during these visits to make the transition easier. I discussed this with Jake, because at 10, I believe he's old enough to have a say in decisions that affect his life. His response was clear and mature beyond his years. He said he didn't want to meet them, not even with supervision. He told me, "Dad, they're just strangers who happen to share my DNA. I don't want to pretend to be their son just because they can't have other kids now." When we declined their offer, they switched tactics. Mark's mother, Jake's biological grandmother, suddenly contacted us claiming she had terminal cancer. She sent a long, emotional email about how her last wish was to meet her only grandson before she died. She even included photos of her in a hospital bed, looking frail and sick. Something about it felt off, so I asked Emily to do some digging. It took her less than 5 minutes to find Mark's mother's Facebook profile. Guess what? She wasn't dying at all. In fact, she was perfectly healthy and posting photos from her luxury cruise in the Mediterranean. The hospital photos were old ones from when she had a minor surgery 2 years ago. They were actually trying to emotionally manipulate a 10-year-old child. But that wasn't the end of their schemes. Lisa started reaching out to our old mutual friends, spinning a story about how I had poisoned Jake against her. She painted herself as a victim of postpartum depression who made one mistake and was now being punished forever. She claimed I had deliberately turned Jake against her and Mark, never telling him about how much his real parents loved him. Some people actually fell for her story. I started getting messages from old friends saying I was being cruel, that every child needs their mother, that I was using Jake to punish Lisa for the affair. These were the same people who had supported me 10 years ago when Lisa abandoned us. One of Jake's friends' mom even had the nerve to tell me at school pickup that I was being selfish by not letting Jake have a relationship with his real family. I blocked them all. These people had no idea what Jake and I had been through. They didn't see me learning to be both mom and dad to a 2-month-old. They weren't there during the sleepless nights, the fevers, the first steps, the first words. They didn't see how hard we worked to build our little family. The court hearing is scheduled for next week. My lawyer says our case is strong. We have Lisa's original letter abandoning Jake, her signed termination of parental rights, my legal adoption papers, and most importantly, Jake's clear preference to stay with me. The judge has agreed to speak with Jake privately in chambers to understand his wishes without any pressure from either side. What really bothers me isn't the legal battle, I'm confident about that. It's how Lisa and Mark are treating Jake like an object they can claim ownership of, rather than a person with his own feelings and choices. They keep talking about their rights as biological parents, but never once have they asked about what Jake wants or needs. Last night, Jake showed me a private message he received on his gaming account. Lisa had somehow found his username and tried to contact him there, saying she was his real mommy and that she had always loved him. Jake blocked her immediately but was upset that she had invaded the one space where he could just be a normal kid playing games with his friends. I've already talked to my lawyer about getting a restraining order. Their behavior is becoming increasingly invasive and disturbing. Jake shouldn't have to worry about his biological mother stalking his online activities or his biological father's mother faking terminal illnesses to manipulate him. Through all this, I'm incredibly proud of how Jake is handling the situation. Yes, he's stressed and anxious, but he's also showing remarkable strength and clarity about what he wants. He told me yesterday, "Dad, you're my real parent because you chose to keep me and love me when they chose to leave." That means more than just being born to someone. The court hearing can't come soon enough. I just want this nightmare to be over so Jake can go back to being a normal 10-year-old kid whose biggest worry should be homework and video games, not court cases and stalking biological parents. Update 3. The court case is finally over, and I can't begin to describe the relief we're feeling. The hearing lasted 2 days, and every minute was intense, but the outcome was worth all the stress and anxiety we endured. The judge was incredible, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who saw right through Lisa and Mark's act. After reviewing all the evidence and speaking with Jake privately, she not only dismissed Lisa's custody petition but also granted us a permanent restraining order against both Lisa and Mark. They can't come within 500 feet of Jake or attempt to contact him through any means, in person, phone, email, social media, or through third parties, until he turns 18. After that, it will be entirely Jake's decision if he wants any relationship with them. Lisa's reaction in court was dramatic, to say the least. When the judge announced her decision, Lisa started screaming that Jake was her son and she had made a mistake leaving him. She kept yelling about how a mother's love can't be erased and that she had carried him for 9 months. The judge had to order her to be quiet or face contempt charges. What really struck me was the judge's response to Lisa's outburst. She said something I'll never forget, "Mrs. Henderson, Lisa's new surname, motherhood isn't a right you can claim after abandoning it for 10 years. It's a responsibility you either choose to accept or reject. You made your choice when you left your 2-month-old son. Mr. Wilson, that's me, made his choice when he stayed and raised that child as his own. Actions have consequences, and you're facing yours today." Mark just sat there stone-faced through the whole thing. He didn't even look at Lisa when she broke down. I guess his tune changed when he realized he couldn't get what he wanted. His lawyer tried arguing about biological rights, but the judge shut that down quickly, pointing out that Mark had explicitly stated in Lisa's abandonment letter that he didn't want to raise Jake. After the hearing, Jake hugged me tighter than he ever has before. He was crying, but they were happy tears this time. He said he felt like he could finally breathe again without worrying about them showing up somewhere. We're not taking any chances though. I've accepted a transfer to my company's office in another state. It's actually a promotion, so it works out well for us. Jake is excited about the move, he says it feels like a fresh start. The new house we're buying has a basketball court in the backyard, which he's thrilled about since he just joined his school's basketball team. Emily is sad we're moving farther away, but she understands. She's already planning to visit us during the holidays. My parents are actually thinking of moving closer to us after they retire next year. The school year ends in 3 weeks, so the timing works out perfectly. Jake will start fresh at his new school in September. We've already looked at the school, it has a great sports program and smaller class sizes, which I think will be good for him. Looking back at these past few months, I'm amazed at how strong Jake has been through all of this. He never once wavered in knowing who his real family was. As he told the judge, "My dad is the one who chose me and stayed with me." That means more than sharing DNA. This whole experience has taught us both that family isn't about biology, it's about choice, love, and commitment. Lisa and Mark might share Jake's DNA, but they'll never share the bond we've built over the past 10 years. We're looking forward to our fresh start, just the two of us, far away from all this drama.